First of all, let me, because this is a formal event, so I want to do a little bit of protocol here. I want to acknowledge the presence of the NCPD Director General, Dr. Mohammed Sheikh, a dear friend. I want to acknowledge Bishop, who is here gracing this occasion. I want to also acknowledge government representatives, but first and foremost, all the youth who have come all this way to engage with us. We say that we want to listen, and we do listen. We try. Not always do we succeed, but of course, the prerequisite for being able to listen is to hear from you, to hear the truth, to hear your concerns, and to be able to internalize those and take them on board. We are here because and I'm glad this thing with the watercolors came out. I think there are some watercolors with men in our report. I just want to say. If not, I'll personally go back and get my watercolors out, and we will include some men. I don't think it's an oversight. I think at least we know that basic premise of reproduction, that women cannot do it on their own. I think we know this. We have learned. So, but thank you for the reminder and pointing it out. What I wanted to say, and I wanted to echo what Ezekiel had said. He said this global report was launched in Nairobi in Kenya. But I wanted to just emphasize that the fact that every year for the past 25 or 30 years, UNFPA has launched a flagship report on a pertinent theme globally, whether it's reproduction in a refugee humanitarian setting, or the milestone of reaching 8 billion people in the world, etc. But every year that was launched in New York, or in Geneva, or in Paris, or I don't know, London, but it was never done in the Global South. It was never done in the Global South. And when they said, okay, now we have to launch it in the Global South, where in the Global South did they choose to launch it? For a global audience with live streaming globally. Nairobi, Kenya. Please give a round of applause. It is because of the position that Kenya holds, not only in Africa and East Africa in particularly, as a representative of the Global South, you see, attracting the UN and so on to come here. It is also because of the good work that Kenya has done in the area of population and population dynamics. There, as you will see, I'm preempting Dr. Sheikh's speech, but there, Kenya has really shown remarkable progress in terms of regulating fertility, making sure that people actually have access to health care, bringing down maternal mortality, etc. I know there are still problems. It was highlighted in the speech. But still, when you start comparing to neighboring countries, Somalia, Burundi, South Sudan, what have you, even Uganda, Kenya has made huge progress. I don't want to reveal my age. I started my first job in the UN in 1998. That's a few years back, yeah? My first job in the UN was where? Here in Kenya. And I traveled throughout the counties here. And, you know, the access to healthcare, etc., back then was pretty basic. As I travel around now, I still see problems, but I also see the remarkable progress that has been made and that you see throughout Kenya in many counties. So a lot of things have happened in the past couple of years, 27 years, I admit. Yes, I'm not an ancestor. I'm a bit younger than that, but but we are walking hand in hand, Bishop. So what is interesting in the world is that from then till now, you have seen a huge urbanization. When the size of Nairobi doubled from when I worked here then till now. The maternal mortality has come down, fertility has come down, and Kenya has really shown progress. Now, when you compare with the rest of the world, Europe, Mohammed Sheikh and I myself, we went to China just last year, and you see the problems they are struggling with. In fact, they are struggling with fertility that is below replacement. If everyone has 2 children, you have replacement, right? Because you have 2 parents, and then they produce 2 children, and then you have replacement. Of course, Ezekiel, as the scientist, will say, no, it's not actually correct because it's 2.1, because some people will die in the process, so you need to add 0.1, and that is replacement rate. But in China, in Europe, many places you see fertility rates that are 1.4, 1.5, 1.2. In China, for example, also below that. So they are not producing enough children to replace themselves. So that, in fact, has become the biggest or a huge problem in the world now. And so when we have this report, which I don't see the front page of right now, but it's very beautiful. It's about choices on both sides of the equation. You know, it's about babies, not having too many, so that we can take care of them in an orderly way, provide for them, make sure they all survive, make sure they all have food to eat, make sure they all get education, etc. But also not having so few that we are not replacing ourselves and the human race, right? So, but what the big issue is now, in many places they are struggling to encourage young people to actually have children, right? So this is also the job for UNFPA now. It's not just about family planning in the traditional sense of having less babies. It is about having as many babies as you desire in a sustainable way. So if you want to have 3 children, yes, make sure you have 3 children, or 5, or 10 even, but make sure you have provisions for their schooling, make sure you have provisions for their clothing, their food, and so on, right? So that is what it is about. But, and for too long, UNFPA was just known for only the family planning part. Now we are changing gears. We are meeting the world where it is. And it was very eye-opening in China. We talked to the Dr. Mohammed Sheikhs of China. They have other names, which I can't pronounce, but they have names. And they are saying now we need to engage with young people for them to marry, and when they marry, to have children. They were telling us stories that with this one-child policy in China, which was probably necessary at the time, but now people marry and they get a puppy. They don't get a child. This is a true story. Mohammed, you will back me up. So it's really challenging, and we may have pockets in the population, particularly in the urban setting of Kenya. I'm not talking Mathare. I'm not talking about West Pokot now. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about Mombasa. I'm talking about Nairobi. I'm talking about Kisumu and so on. And there we see those trends that are the global trends already coming. So we need to have these support mechanisms in place, which means access to healthcare without going bankrupt. We need that moral and support that is there. A lot of people don't feel they have the family network when they're here because, you know, in the past people had children, etc., but their grandparents were there in the village, so they would just take care. Now, young people are here, they're working from early morning to late evening, but where are the grandparents to support? They're up country, right? So that fabric in the society has changed, and that is now leading into a way area where fertility is actually low and people are not, they want children, but they can't responsibly feel that they can put children in this world without having some sort of support. So there's a whole new dimension to that. We see it in many other countries, but it will eventually come here to Kenya, and it will start probably in the urban areas. Another thing that is a very interesting change in the world is that is related to the labor force. We see here a lot of, there was discussion about TVET, someone was saying. You know, we have a lot of people in universities, very highly skilled and educated. In US, in Europe, in Asia, the advent of artificial intelligence is something that will really change the demands of the workforce. The dilemma now is that manual labor, there's a high demand and people can't find manual labor, at least in Western Europe and US, people to do digging a hole in the ground for planting a tree or doing dishwashing in a restaurant. They can't find people. But yet college graduates who have spent 4 or 5 years taking an education, spending money for that, either they cannot find jobs or they are being laid off because of AI. So now where you've always told don't get manual labor, etc., do get more skilled labor, they feel that they are now, they have been shortchanged, they have been cheated, because that promise that was out there, society is not delivering on it. And it's not someone's fault. It is just that mechanism that we are seeing, that change that we are seeing. So this is where also young people really feel that anxiety that, and they are high skilled. My son and his friends, I asked him, so okay, now you're going to university and are spending quite a lot of money on this. Why don't you become a plumber? Why don't you become someone who is a builder in a house or something of that? That there will be, we know there is a demand. But they said, but that doesn't interest us, because now they have already from young age been groomed in a certain way. They want jobs where they use their minds, etc., right? So even though they can see rationally that maybe it's not the best choice, they still stick with it because that's how they have been raised and conditioned. So it's a very, very interesting time that we live in. For Africa, a place like Kenya, we will probably see these dynamics coming in both ways. That we are, the idea of people going elsewhere to find labor, or we try with industrial policies to attract factories to come here for that labor. But again, the same issue of well-educated youth not being able to find jobs, and the way they are so responsible, they say, well, why should I then have a child? Why should I then marry? And then we have this issue of low fertility, and we're not replacing ourselves with a new generation. So I wanted to add these few things to the discussion, because I feel, speaking on I don't know which part of the equation, but stimulating this intergenerational dialogue, Bishop, intergenerational dialogue, that I think we need to step out of this, that this is just a question of the young people against the old people and this and that. There are bigger forces at play, not only in Kenya, but in the entire world, that condition us to now seeing ourselves at odds with each other. It is not my generation or the even older generation's fault, so to speak, that there are fewer jobs for those university graduates. It is these forces that we are talking about, right? It is not that generation's fault, so to speak, that it's harder to have children and afford them and so on, right? So I think that sort of finger pointing is not helpful. And we, as I'm talking as an older person maybe, is that we have to really listen to the young people, and we have to understand and go beyond understanding of the world they're going into. We have to really put ourselves in their shoes and empathize. I can say that some of the challenges young people have today, I don't envy. And I'm actually happy sometimes not being a young person, because the challenges that you have and you have in front of you are real and they are hard because of these mega trends that we are seeing. So we have to be understanding. We have to listen and go beyond even listening and be supportive to you. So I hope that with that, you will see us as your partner. I hope that the elderly in here or the older people will be able to see the youth as the partners. And by seeing that we can really translate Bishop's words into actual action based on mutual empathy, so we can walk together. Asante sana.